You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And today my guest hails all the way from Dallas, Texas, an area that I keep hearing so much about for some reason of late. And I've obviously always known about it, but it feels like I should be going there and visiting there at some point. Samad Syed, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you, Julie, for having me here. And nice to meet you. I know you're in Australia and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. That's great. You know, that's amazing to see you.
Ready for a good day. I've got a good start to my day having a chat with you.
Nice. Thank you. Same here.
So, Samad, you have got a business called SRS Web Solutions. You are based in America, but the purpose of your business is automation, digital automation of some of the elements that we need for healthcare. So you deal directly with dental practices as well. Tell us a little bit more about SRS Web Solutions.
Awesome. Yes, that's a very good question. So SRS Web Solution is nothing but a holding company. And within SRS Web Solutions, we have a product that's called M-Consent. So the vision for M-Consent was to bring automation within dental practices, specifically dental practices. And the reason was that initially back in 2015, 2016, what we saw was that the front office was always struggling with patient intake portion, like the amount of documentation that they have to make sure that the patients are checked in properly, all the documents are completed properly, insurance verification is done well, accurate data, and then entering all the data. That takes a ton of time for any practice to do that work. So we looked at that process, and my background is process improvements for past 15 years, and I have trained ton of business leaders in improving the processes. So when my brother-in-law let me see the process in his dental practice, I'm not a dentist by profession, but I have a brother-in-law who does. So he said, this is a challenge we got to resolve. And this is something that we struggle with every day. So can you help me with that? So that initiated the entire business, and that's where we started from.
Oh, fantastic. And certainly in America, I think with HIPAA compliance, it adds another element of complexity.
It's big. Yeah, it's big. Yeah, HIPAA is big. You got to make sure that your practice is HIPAA compliant. That's true.
Yeah. So for the Australian audience, we've got American audience as well, but for the Australian audience, can you describe very briefly the HIPAA compliance that practices over there need to really pay attention to?
Sure. So HIPAA compliance is basically what you have to make sure is that the patient information, it's called PHI. So you have to make sure that any patient information, whether it's a name, it's their phone number, their driver license ID, whatever that is, with that, if you're able to match what issue this patient could have, that becomes like a protected health information. So if I'm a patient, the dental office have to make sure that nobody else other than who I give authority to have access to my my patient data. Just to give you an idea, if you have a patient that's pregnant, and if somebody finds out that Judy, who is coming to dental office, is pregnant, and outside the office, if somebody finds out, it could be a big problem, right? So it could be. So the thing is that now it becomes a responsibility of dental office to protect that information of that patient. So that's, at a 50,000 foot level, that's what HIPAA compliance is.
Yeah, beautiful. And certainly everyone around the world needs to comply with privacy rules and acts and laws and all the things. And it can be far more straightforward if you've got all of that information housed within the dental software, which is password protected, and you've got proper privacy policies established for your team members within your practice. But of course, our information comes in from beyond that. We're emailing specialists and other dental practices, and this is where there is the possibility of things getting a little bit more public than what people would like it to be. And so with your M-Consent, how does that help fix that issue? And I just love the term that you gave, what your kind of work had been, which was process improvement. It just made me so excited that those two words together, I feel that's evolution, isn't it? Isn't that evolution? It's wonderful.
Absolutely. So what we do is that, so I want you to visualize a patient's, ton of patients coming to your practice every morning. You have 5, 10 patients in your waiting area, and everybody is trying to complete their documentation process, which is like a patient registration process. You have medical history that you want the patients to complete. You want them to complete their health history. You want them to complete their, what medications they're taking, and also you want them to consent for, some of the treatments that they're going through, that they are going to go through. So when for them to complete that information for a new patient, it can take anywhere between 15 minutes to 20 minutes. It's a very, very tedious process. And that's not a good start to have a new patient in your office and you hand them a bunch of paperwork and asking them to complete, rather than you want them to feel welcome, have a comfortable chair, have a coffee, and get ready for your treatment or your cleaning with the doctor or with the hygienist, right? So to remove that friction, when the patient comes in the practice, what we did is that we allow the dental offices to text or email all this documentation ahead of time to the patient. So the moment they schedule their appointment, with their appointment reminder, we send out the list of forms that they need to complete before they come in. A lot of patients, about 70%, as per the data that we have collected over years, would do that before they come in. So that helps the front office. Now the front office knows that the patient that is coming has already completed the required documentation. And the good thing about that is that it integrates with their EMR system. So if they're using like Open Dental or Dentrix or EagleSoft, it integrates. So all they have to do is review the documentation, one click of a button, it fills out their patient chart within the EMR system, and boom, you have a patient that's now ready to see the doctor without having to do all the documentation. Now, there's some patients who doesn't complete, so you hand over an iPad to them and you ask them to complete the documentation that they have missed to complete before they come in. So they're completing those documentation either on their phone or on their iPad before they check in into the practice.
And it's interesting, this thought of having patients complete their paperwork before they even hit the practice, that initial thoughts that come up are, or in the past that have come up for me is, oh, would they even do it? Is it asking too much of them? And, all these sort of things. But your couple of things. One, you're right. At that time, you're wanting to help make that patient feel as welcome and comfortable in your space as possible. And all of a sudden, you've got them in there doing hard work and under time pressure as well. But also, I've recently been taking mum to a whole bunch of different specialist appointment times, and that redoing of the paperwork over and again. And depending on your level of health, you may have a whole series of medications or past operations or things that you've got to try to recall back. And when you are sitting in a brand new waiting room, as I say, under time pressure to get this form done, it's not an enjoyable experience at all. And I can see why 70%, which is a fantastic number, I feel, I can see why 70% would prefer to do it that way. Not just they'll go along with you because you've asked it, but I think a lot of people would prefer to just have a bit of time and airspace about their head so they can properly consider and ensure that information is really correct.
Absolutely. And there's one more benefit that we have seen, which was unintended benefit, which is that the show rating started to improve. The reason for that is that if they're completing paperwork ahead of time, they know now really well, they're not going to forget that they have to come to the practice. And if you are getting documentation from the person, that he's not going to, just not show up in the last hour, right? So that helps the show rate too. So that was an unintended benefit that we saw when patients started to complete and prepare for their for their treatment or for their visit.
That is fantastic. It's setting the tone for a good relationship, and it kind of makes me think that it's moving itself into Robert Cialdini's 6 areas of influence. I don't know if it's consistency or what, but I remember him talking about in his book that if you got dental patients to write, this is back years ago, when we still had business cards, appointment cards, if you got the patient themselves to write down their next appointment time when they're standing there at the front desk, their show-up rate is even stronger because they're making that commitment. And so subconsciously they'll go ahead and follow through. Plus, you are engaging the patient in a deeper way than just that initial phone call to come in for that appointment time. So I can really get that would improve show-up rates. That's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff.
Absolutely.
Now, once with the way, though, you were talking before about a couple of the American-based software companies that it's compliant with, or it speaks to, that M-Consent works with. Would it work with other software companies, for example, the ones here in Australia?
Sure. Yeah. So what we have to do is that we got to work with we got to figure out what kind of APIs they have, and then we definitely can work with others. I named few just to give us an example, but we work with a lot more other than just those 2 or 3 that I mentioned.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And is it right too that you do more than just the M-Consent as well? Do you do a bit of work within dental practices to help them with their database?
Yeah, so we help dental practices. So that's how we started. That was our beginning 7 years ago. What we help with practices now is in 3 different areas. One is the patient intake portion that I just talked about. The second one is the patient communication portion of the practice, which is basically texting with the patients, improving the responsiveness when the patient have questions. You allow them to have text messaging option with you. We also help on the growth sector, growing the practice. So we help with the treatment plan reminders, and I can explain more what that is. We help them with collecting payments. We help them with online scheduling, and so there are multiple areas. And then the last part is that helping them with reactivating that patient database. So that's growing their practice using the reactivating the patient database. That's what we help with. So these are 3 primary areas. So number 1 is patient data, number 2 is patient communication, number 3 is patient reactivation, patient database reactivation.
I've all of a sudden got 27 questions for you.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's right. Let's get into it. This aspect of, I feel like that I've been in the dental industry for, I don't know, 35 plus years. I'm trying to think of how old I am. Probably, 40 years now. No, 35 years. And back in the day, of course, there were no computerized practices at all, no dental practice software or anything like that. So the process of doing anything with your database never crossed anybody's mind other than just making sure those recalls were going out. And because there's no way, it was too arduous. Most dental practices, depending on how long they've been in existence for, the number of patient card files that they'd have could run in anywhere between 1,500 to 10,000. So you're not going to go through them. There's no way of doing that. Then the dental computer software companies came out, and they really just managed, and still do to some degree apart from the more modern ones, they really just house the patient details, their charting, treatment plans, track all the payments and do the scheduling. However, we've entered into this other space now, and marketers have been in this space for such a long time, where you are making sure you're building your database out and you are making full use of that database. And there's quite elegant systems to be able to do that. And from my business, from my end, I've used Keep, which is the old Infusionsoft, for years and years and years, for the last 15 years. And that had opened my eyes up to the possibilities that dental practices should have with their own databases, and to take a bit of a fresh, more innovative look at that. So can you tell us a little bit more from your perspective where you see dental practices who want to be very active in their own database and look at it that little bit of a different way? What would your advice be to them?
So here's when our light bulb went on, is we did a quick survey asking dental practices, especially the dental practice administrators and the practice owners, on what do you think is the number 1 asset that you have in a practice? And we got various answers. So some people said, my equipment is number 1 asset. Some people said that, my people are number 1 asset. which is, true to a point. And then some people said my location is my number one asset. So these are different things, but very, very few people realize, very few dental practices realize is their patient database is the number one asset that they're sitting on. So think about this. If someone comes to does a valuation of your practice, what are they going to look at? They're going to look at how many patients do you have in your database, because that means that if there's a huge difference between somebody having 500 patients in the database compared to 5,000 patients in the database, because I know that on command, you can do hygiene reappointments. If you have 5,000 patients in the database, you can do recalls. You can bring them in when you start communicating with them. You give offers, you give coupons, you connect with them, and you can start bring them in. So it's very, very powerful. And I think that still there are a lot of practices that haven't realized the power of the utilizing and keeping your patient database active. So that's where, I think it's a message that I wanted to give it to all the practices. They have whatever they use. It doesn't matter what tool you use, but what matters is that you cannot ignore the patient database that you have. It's huge.
Yeah.
And your staff have to know that it's important for me to have accurate information of my patients, whether it's email, whether it's phone number, whether it's address, because that's what keeps your office going. That's what keeps your office healthy from the revenue perspective.
Yeah, gosh. And you've helped me kind of the thoughts that I'm having as you were describing that. I love that the number one asset is the database, because in essence, yes, everything's important, absolutely. But team members do come and go, but you
Yes.
still function because that database is there.
Mhm.
The owner dentist may decide to sell and not be the main dentist there anymore. And that's okay as well, because the database keeps that business alive. And you don't get to use any of the equipment if there's no database. And so really paying due attention to that database is enormous. And quite often, during all these COVID situations and things that have been going on, dental practices have been moving through like a roller coaster of
Mhm.
busyness and then drought. And
100%.
the usual place to go to, we've got gaps in our appointment book. We need to improve our SEO. We need to do some social
Mhm.
media. We need to get fresh blood in here. But what you're
Mhm.
saying is, depending on your database, the money's already there. You just got to reconnect with them again.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that you need to realize that there are other dental offices in your area that are willing to pay $200 to $600 to get that patient in their database per patient. Right? So that's a dollar amount that it takes for you to bring a new patient into your practice. And if you already have that kind of a patient database size in your practice, and if you're not keeping that active, know that somebody's willing to take it.
Yeah, gosh, that's a very good figure to have in mind, because just as it's going to cost you $200 to $600 per new patient to get them to transfer from another practice over to you, can you imagine if you just spent $200 to $600 per
Mhm.
day generally on making
Mhm.
your current database more delighted when they come in every day?
Mhm. Mhm.
And all of a sudden, you are looking at a completely different kind of experience that you're offering to your patients. So they can't be enticed away, even if these other practices spending a lot to entice them away. And just
Yeah.
last night, my husband and I went to the Lobster Cave. It's a magnificent restaurant here in Melbourne. It's all about seafood, just magnificent. And I hadn't been there I'd only been there once so many years ago. But they are renowned or as always being busy. And so you have this concept of, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, it's always going to be busy, probably a bit loud, and, maybe the tables will be a bit too close together, but it's going to be fun because it's going to be just seafood. And we went along, and when we turned up, there was a maitre d', and it
Mhm.
was all dim lighting. And he said to my husband, Charles. I'm like, oh gosh, that's impressive. He knew that that's who we were. That's very impressive for a start. And then we were guided to our table slowly, with him constantly looking behind him to make sure that we were keeping up. And they sat us there, and I'm like, this the ambiance in here is just magnificent. I didn't realize it was so high end. And then we sat down. We were so well attended to every step of the way. The tables were beautifully spaced out. There was no overbearing background music. We could easily conduct conversations. Every step was fantastic. The food was fantastic. We got a complimentary wine with a salad, which I thought was a fantastic idea.
Nice.
And then at the very end of the meal, we got complimentary ports delivered to us as well. And I thought to myself, this is all that stuff, the additional stuff. I would have been satisfied if I'd had a lower level of service than that. But we had such an experience. It was so unanticipated in a positive way that we're talking about it. I'm talking to you about it right now. I'll be talking about my experience for the next however many times. And this is where dental practices need to turn their attention to. Stop this constant desire to spend money on new patients coming in, and let's start spending money and time and energy and innovative thought. Be process improvement driven when it comes to that patient experience, because that's how you maintain and build that database.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, you need for a general dentistry, if you are a general dentistry and you have 1,500 to 2,000 patients in your database, that's enough to keep your practice profitable. And that's enough to keep you going with good investing back into your practice. But at that point, you have to start looking at what percentage of my budget have to focus on my current database. How do we keep my current patients happy? How do I keep my current patients coming back to us and protect them? That's how I see it.
Beautiful. I love it.
And I will tell you, seafood is my favorite. Fish and chips is something I can't resist. It's amazing. And
well, we had to walk past a fish and chip place to get there, and I was like, oh.
Awesome.
I'm actually recently joined a Facebook group, a ridiculous one, about lovers of potato cakes.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Do you know what potato cakes are? You might call them.
I don't. I don't know.
It's a disc of potato dipped in batter and deep fried.
Oh.
And I have never entered a group that is so active. People are sending photos and uploading photos of potato cakes Australia wide and rating them. It's hilarious. It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And so with our database, and one of the steps that, with the communications, the SMS messaging, that additional layer of engagement that you can have with patients, I'm still coming across dental practices that even though they've got the ability to receive SMSs from patients, they're like, no, that's a complication that we don't need. But, we're talking about nurturing the database. We're talking about building strong relationships and being very engaging. SMSing and getting payments via those sort of places, that can be very helpful.
It is very, very, very helpful. And I'll tell you this, the way technology have progressed in the last 10 years is amazing. And you literally have to, I talk to my dentist friends, and I tell them that, listen, 10 years ago, you and I have to go to a bank to deposit a check. Now, you have a population that is literally will not do it because they can do it on the phone. They can take a picture and they can deposit it. You have an age group, the Gen Zs and Gen X, all those guys, they are ordering food from the mobile phone, and they're making payments, and they're doing everything through a mobile phone. And there is no point for you resisting not to take text messages from your patients or your staff not working with text messages. And I think they understand that the world have changed, dramatically in last 10 years. That is going to push and demand all the practices that are in business to change for good. I think it's happening for good because it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to make you more productive. The change is something that you have to adopt to, and that's how you're going to survive and grow within this competitive era, I think.
Yeah, and it makes you easy to deal with as a patient. It makes you an easy company to deal with.
Absolutely.
You want to remove all the barriers, as many barriers as possible. And from that treatment plan follow up when people aren't actually booking in for their treatment plans, those kind of follow-ups as well. I mean, the numbers, the open rate numbers of mobile phone communications is so much stronger than sending them out an email, for example.
Yeah, and I don't know how when that is going to change, but for now it's 98%.
Okay.
98% open rate on text messaging. And if it's 20% on email, you should be happy.
So it's a big difference, isn't it?
It is a big difference. It is a big
Yeah.
difference.
And this is where, too, with your process improvements, I'm going to be using that for the rest of my life now. If you take that process improvement approach to the SMSing, because my thought is, because I'm old, my thought is the SMS is that it's not a strong enough impression. And so they may open it, but then they kind of forget about it straight away. But do it in a smarter way. So don't just have a random SMS that goes out that says, oh, you've got incomplete treatment, so they can just open it and then forget all about it. But put a little bit more thought, strategy, creative thought mindset behind what that SMS says. So you do, that's just the very first step in maybe 2, 3, or 4 steps that's going to engage them back into their treatment plan.
So what we do is with our treatment plan reminders for dental practices, what we learned is that you have to bring in education when it comes to you reminding about your treatment plan. So we have in our system, what we do is that we read the procedure codes to understand why this patient, what was the treatment plan that was given to this patient. And from there, what we do is that, okay, this person was given a root canal treatment plan. Then we add education about, hey, what is the cavity? What is the root canal? And to the root canal, what is the reason you shouldn't procrastinate? Because your problem is not going to go away because you're procrastinating. Your problem is going to be getting worse, meaning that now if you do treatment plan, if you take care of your root canal, then you may be able to save yourself from an implant. If you need to do a cavity, do it now, so you're not spending $25,000 to do an implant or $5,000 to do a root canal. So that kind of education that goes out in form of text messaging, in form of email, asking them not to procrastinate, that has helped many, many dental offices.
And I think you've tapped into one of the key elements that I think a lot of dental practices miss, and a lot of dental practitioners miss when they are trying to appeal to patients to come back in again. They say, come back in again because you still need that root canal. Where in their brain, they're like, well, I'm not having any pain anymore. I don't know if I do need the root canal. I don't need to spend that money and spend that time and spend that energy to get it done. That's for sure. I can't afford any of those right now. But but the thing is that you're tapping into the ramification if you don't get anything done. That's
Absolutely.
where that patient's need to get this treatment done is triggered. And so your system, your system actually it works so well with the dental practice software that it kind of, in essence, assesses what that patient needs and then sends them out relevant information around that.
Absolutely, that's what I think is the strength of using a system. And if you try to do that, but a lot of people depend on their either front office or the treatment plan coordinator to make calls and try to educate the patients. But how often can you do that? It's very manual. What we tell our practices is that, yes, if you want to do that, that's great, but you need a helping hand, a smart helping hand that's going to do your job, where you know that something, the communication is happening, whether your front office or your treatment plan coordinator or your office manager is making those calls or not, but you have a smart hand that's helping you out with reaching out to patients.
Because you think about the number of things that have to happen or be in place to create the environment for team members to be able to do this well. And I'm not doubting that a lot of practices will be doing it very well, and I commend them all for it. But this is not 100% of the time, because they need to have the team member who understands dental, understands patient psychology, understands all of that to be able to be the person that can do it. They also need to be able to have that level of confidence and willpower to get through all these phone calls when you keep getting knocked back, knocked back, knocked back. So it depends on the character. You've got to get the right character in place as well. You also need to have that person allocate enough time to be able to get all this stuff done.
That's a big hurdle.
Yeah. And then on top of all of that, you've got to make sure that they've got enough time, despite the operations of every day, the daily operations of the practice, that sometimes I have time, but sometimes I don't have time. And sometimes the list is really huge, and sometimes the list isn't so huge. And my energy behind doing that task moves from wanting to book this patient in to, I want to get through this damn list. There's another 50 people I have to communicate with today. And so to create that ideal environment where you get great success, that's a lot of points to tick off. And to have as a support this automation side of it, this could be a game changer for some practices.
Absolutely. I'll tell you this. If I give 100 treatment plan reminder, if I give 100 treatment plans to my patients, if I'm a practice owner, I give 100 treatment plans. Now, I went to a practice and the office manager showed me a book that he needs to literally call back, and he's not able to. It's a book. It's like 20 pages book.
Many pages.
Yeah, many pages. And he's making notes like, I got to call this guy for this. I got to call this guy for this. And when we discussed with him, he's like, oh my God, that's so good. If I can at least get 5 patients out of this back, I get my return on investment. I mean, just if I get 5 out of this, probably 300 of those, I get my return on investment. So that's how he was seeing it, which I thought was a pretty awesome way to look at it. Is that I have 300, I'm not able to call, but if this text messaging can at least get me 3 or 5, it's great. It's doing something, right? But it does more than that.
Does more than that. Magnificent. Moving into the reactivation side of dental practices for patients, this is often an area that gets neglected for years at a time.
Yeah.
That you kind of all of a sudden think, oh, we haven't done that for a long time. Let's do that. Last time we did this was 4 years ago. Let's try it again this time. Tell me a bit more about your thoughts, your insights, your kind of work that you guys do with reactivation.
Sure. So I'll give you an example of a practice that we were recently working with. It's Crescent Family Dental out of Chicago. And I'm taking name because I have permission to do that. The guy, the doctor was pretty happy with the results. And he and me and him talked a little bit, and he said the same thing. I need new patients. I need to get patients in my door. And it's not enough. I have associate that I have to take care of. I have staff that I need to take care of, and he have like a couple of other offices. So I asked him the same question: how many patients do you have in your database? And he took a pause and he said, I don't know. I said, let's figure that out. That's the first thing we got to look at it. And what we saw was he had about 2,500 patients in his database, and 2,500 patients. And we put a strategy together with him, and we said that, you just don't need to send email, text message, or you don't have to do just one thing. What we said is that let's plan for next 6 months. How do we re-engage these patients and ask them to come back? And a simple message like, hey, doctor want to see you. And doctor just asked, so this message is going from office manager to the patient and said, hey, doctor wanted to see how you're doing. It's been a long time that he haven't seen you. That's it. No coupon, nothing, right? Very personalized. And for that, you definitely need tools. You can use, emails, you can text by yourself, but 2,500 patients is a long list to send email by yourself and text it out individually. So you need tools. So we have tools which will basically automate this entire process. So we send out an email, we send out a text message, then we targeted them on Facebook, and then we send out some direct mail. And in 6 months, consistently, we were seeing 40 to 45, 50 patients coming back into the practice every month.
Get out.
And that is eye opener. And he's like, what did we spend? We didn't spend $5,000 a month. We spent way less than that, probably like $100 per patient or so, instead of spending like $5,000, $600 to get a patient into the office. So actually, no, not even $100, like $40, $50 per patient he was spending to bring in those, because it's its own database, right? It's cheaper to market to your database rather than trying to find new patients, because the patients know you, they know the location, they know the doctor, they know the office, everything is pretty well known. So, people say, I do recalls, and I'll tell you, recalls is a one strategy, and that strategy could work, could not work. There are multiple things, but that's why I wrote a book, The Art of Patient Reengagement, and that book talks about the detailed strategy of how you can reactivate patients into your practice. And this book is, I'm going to shamelessly advertise this right now. It's available on Amazon for.
That's wonderful. I'm going to buy that straight away. The Art of Patient Reengagement. They can go to Amazon and buy that book.
Yeah.
I'll provide a link in the show notes about that. That's tremendous.
Sure. So that's what the book talks about, is that what strategies, because it's not just recalls that are, for some people it's effective, but what they don't realize is that it's not 100% effective. For some people it's 5%, for some people it's 20%, but there's so many other things that goes to so much effort have to be put in to bring these patients back into your practice. Just because think about it, number of emails you're getting in your inbox every day, number of text messaging, WhatsApp messages, Facebook is full of advertisements. So the amount of effort that needs to be done now to reactivate the patient database is a lot more than what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And it's with the newfound ease that we have to email a lot of people or communicate with a lot of people and send a lot of messages and stuff. Also, that means everyone's doing the same thing, and it's a very
everybody's doing the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The kind of success stories that you're having, you're seeing kind of on the ground evidence that this nurturing of the database, paying your attention to the database, putting that as your number one asset. You're seeing the proof in the pudding, aren't you?
Absolutely. And what we are seeing is that the people who start putting, at least, what I have seen, which actually hurts me also, is that people putting their 1,000% attention trying to get new patients in the practice. But if they put in like 50% of what they're putting out there into their current patient database, I think they can do magic with that. They're leaving money on the table. That's what I say. You're leaving money on the table.
And when we're talking about putting all that time, energy, money into getting new patients coming through and not paying attention to your current database and therefore the current experience that you're offering, you are possibly just paying for a conveyor belt, that just as quickly as you're getting the patients through, they're jumping out the back end as well, because the experience isn't one to hang around for. So making sure that you're seeing that database as the number one, you're making sure that you stop that conveyor belt, that you've got people who are this tribe that is constantly growing, that just want to have their dentistry done with you guys.
Yes. And what it allows the practice owner or the practice manager to focus on is that, hey, I have this 2,500 patients. I want to take care of them. I want to reactivate them. And that also means that it's cheaper for me to fill my chairs. That means you're making an impact in your bottom line. If you're spending $20,000 in new patients, what I want you to think about that, put maybe like a couple of grand on your current database, right? And save some money, that the effort you're putting out to fill those chairs, not with new patients, but also look at what can you do? Can I pull in at least 20% of my current patients coming back into my practice this week? 30%. Keep increasing that. You got to have some tracking and measurements. Is like, what is a percentage of my current database patients that are coming back to me on a weekly basis? And the more you have, that means the less you're advertising to the new patients. That means the cost of your patient acquisition is lower compared to always going out for new patients and always looking for that, bringing in new patients in the market, into your practice.
Yeah. And I like that when you did that reactivation with a client in Chicago, that it didn't have any special offer, because that's another mental trap that people can fall into, that in order to entice my patients back, I need to offer them a financial deal to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But really, if it'd be interesting what kind of ideas came up in a brainstorming session with your team, saying for the next 6 months, we're not going to be spending these, because some practices are spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month on SEO, social media marketing, all the things, but we're going to spend $5,000, for example, every month, not the 10 or 15,000 on the advertising. $5,000 we've got to spend on patient experience in whatever way, whether it's a repaint or introducing a coffee machine or whatever it is. Ask your whole team, if we had this kind of money to spend on improving the patient experience, what ideas can you come up with? And then when you're reactivating, rather than saying, come back here and we won't charge you the full price, but come back because check out this new stuff that we've got for you, that's an enticement to come back in again.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, keeping your patients updated with what's happening is one more big reason for you to contact them. And people love that. They want to know what's happening in their practice that they have been going to, right? Baby showers is a good, like somebody in the staff, going through good times, share that. Birthdays, not only connecting with patients when they have their birthdays, but celebrate what's happening within your practice and ask them to pick up a cookie bag or whatever you're giving out, and then when they stop by, just that's the time they find to schedule themselves. So there are multiple ways that you can connect with your current database, current patients, to come back to your practice. You just have to sit down and think through that with your staff. And there's so many good ideas come in, and people usually don't think about that way, and they're just in the rush to get things done, and let's get new patients, and then you have like a bucket that has holes where people come in, they leave, they come in, they leave, but you don't have a CAT system that can recycle them.
Yeah, and you think you're being successful because all you're tracking is the numbers coming into that bucket rather than tracking what's going out of it. And I had an interesting conversation with somebody else in marketing, and it brought up a thought in mind that I thought, that's a really powerful thing. And so when we're talking about open rates of SMSs as opposed to emails, for example, you mentioned the 20%. When we come back from a reactivation process, and it's nice to always be on that reactivation journey and not have it be something that you do once every 5 years. This person said, even if that email doesn't get open, those, maybe once a quarter you send out a newsletter, and even if that email doesn't get opened, it doesn't mean that person hasn't seen it. It's still making some kind of impression. And as long as you're not emailing them too often, even if they've gone somewhere else for their dental treatment, they're not necessarily going to unsubscribe from your emails because you're only coming out every so often.
Yeah.
However, that subject line, if all of a sudden they're not as happy with that other dental practice, or that subject line indicates that you're doing something that they really like the sound of, that is, in essence, a continual reactivation process.
I'll tell you a story of my personal story.
Yeah.
I had a guy, his name is Matt. He has been emailing me about, some financial aspect of the business for past 14 months. Okay. And I'm seeing his email. I know I have to talk to him, but I don't have to talk to him now. But this guy consistently sends me some information about what's happening. He sends me information about how he can help. And I see that on every 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks. I've been seeing that for 14 months. And one evening I was sitting and I'm like, I got to read this. What do you have? I read it. I scheduled a call with him like 2 weeks ago. And I told him, listen, I don't know if you have automated this or whatever it is, but I have been reading your name for past 14 months. And today I've decided to talk to you. Isn't that funny that you might give up? A lot of people give up. They don't wait 14 months, but things takes time sometimes, and you just have to wait for a moment that when somebody has time to read that and say, I got to react to it now.
Yeah, I love that story, and I encourage people out there to think about what their impression is when they receive these regular emails coming through. What makes you not open it, but what also makes you not unsubscribe either, and want that continual reminder that this person or service or company are still out there. There was a book written called Successful Advertising, And the author of the book was Thomas Smith. And Thomas Smith, in this book, wrote about how we develop enough engagement with someone that knows nothing about us to the point where they may actually eventually buy from us. And he said the number of impressions we need to make on people is 20 impressions. And the journey of those 20 impressions are, I'm not really seeing it, to, oh, I'm seeing this often. Oh, this is a pain in the neck to keep seeing this message over and again. And God, how do I get rid of this person in my life? And, oh, maybe I'm missing out on something. Or I might ask other people if they've found out about this person, if worked with this person, to eventually, okay, I'm going to find out what this is all about. And that's 20 impressions. You know when this book was written?
No, I
1870.
Oh, that
We
is
have
so on
always,
spot, though.
it's amazing. We have always required, even with the old-fashioned way of doing advertising and promotion back in 1870, we've always required a journey of participation, if you like, or a journey of impressions. And what you just spoke about then, I was reflecting to there are some people whose name is constantly top of mind because their emails constantly come up in front of me. I never open them, but maybe after that number of impressions goes by and I've got that time and opportunity, or you develop that thought, maybe I'm missing out on something here and I need to look into it. But we need to keep that cadence of communication, connection, engagement there.
One more thing I want to add, what I read, a few months ago, was that you focus on one channel, but the moment you try connecting with them with like 2 to 3 different channels, then the journey just starts getting faster to where people are connecting with you faster than what if you use just one channel. For example, if I'm emailing somebody, but the moment you add a text messaging or a phone call on top of that email, and then you also add a Facebook ad that's retargeting them, that journey is going to be super fast compared to if you're just emailing them for months. So that is something what I read, which I have included that in my book, where I talked about you just can't contact them over the phone or text them or email them, but now you have to add Facebook ads, you have to add direct mail. A lot of people forget about postcards, direct mail, but if you add that, then the number of people who you are able to get and all of them through this 3 to 4 different channels, your response rate is going to be much, much, much higher than just using one single channel.
That's amazing. And it highlights the fact that times are changing all the time. New technology is available all the time. There's sort of systems that we can put in place that are constantly evolving. And when you are a dental practice owner manager in your dental practice, it all becomes about dental and patient. But this is another sphere of information that's out there.
Yeah.
And keeping up to date by contacting people like yourself is crucial to stay ahead of the game and really start to take advantage of all of these wonderful opportunities around us.
Yes. And I do that myself too. I keep listening to the experts in the industry and learn from them so I can help other people.
Beautiful. If there are dental practices out there that think we need to speak to this man, we need to be able to put our database as asset number one, how can they reach out? What does the journey look like?
I would say that the best way is mconsent.net is our website. And the second thing is LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile I can share with you, and this could go out in the podcast section.
Yes.
And those are the best ways to connect with me, I would say.
Beautiful. Anything else before we wrap up our conversation that you think is important to raise?
No, I think that I would just repeat that if you are someone who is thinking that I need to start thinking about my current patient database, I would say that I did my job. I just want you to start looking at that. And I want you to start, I want you to stop ignoring your current patient database and start thinking about what tools you can use, what strategies you can use, even if it's an Excel sheet, sending out emails manually, sending out text messages, do like 5 per day, 20 per day, but don't stop connecting with your own patients that knows you, because that's going to make a difference between a very successful dental office and the practice that's always looking for new patients. So that's my message, is that your patient database is the number one asset, and do not ignore that, because that's a cardinal sin.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, it's been such an interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Same here. Thank you so much, Julie. This was amazing discussion, and I learned from you today. So it's a lot of good things. Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, then I encourage you to head over to Amina and my website, dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. You will find all the information that you need if you would like to gain our assistance in helping you and your team achieve great success. We've got online courses, consulting programs, the club membership. We also have a whole bunch of tools and resources that are available for free that will help you achieve your practice goals. If you would like to find out more, you can also email us directly at info@dentalbusinessmastery.com.au. Thanks so much for listening.